One of my favorite things about Dark Souls are the emotes, especially the ones in Dark Souls 3. Pointing, straight or down, respectful or evil, maybe even a little fun, there's so much personality here. The issue with them, though, is that they aren't useful in combat. Try to emote against Vort, see where that gets you. But what if we had to emote to win? That's what this challenge is going to make us do. On this run, I'm going to emote after every single attack. And that leaves me two things to define: what an emote is, and what qualifies as an attack. My personal definition for what an attack on this run is this. Any action we take, whether it's a punch, thrust, or even a roll with Longfinger Kirk's armor set, as long as it does damage, that counts as an attack. Alternatively, if an enemy blocks our attack and doesn't take damage, that still counts. Attacks that either miss, or are close enough to stun but not do damage, do not count as an attack that we will emote after. As for what counts as an emote, after a hit, you must complete an emote in full. Most emotes in this game have you put your weapon away temporarily, and for this run, once you take your weapon back out, you're in the clear. For emotes that don't put away your weapon, you must wait until you regain movement. If the emote is interrupted, whether from a hit or a grab, that does not count. And if you roll to cancel an emote that hasn't been completed in full, that also will not count as an emote, and you must do another one. With that, I'll stop wasting your time. I mean, you're here for the run, right? We decide for our character creation that warrior is the best, since my initial idea is just to do the most damage per hit, reducing our potential emote count. We also create a character that will fit our level of expressiveness we're going to have to express on this run, and I'll do it expressly as to not waste your time. The Cemetery of Ash is typically the calm before the storm that is the run, as it tells us how things are about to go. Most enemies here die in one swing, and then we have to wait a couple of seconds emoting in order to recharge our attack. This is already annoying. And it's annoying because if we were to not kill an enemy with a hit, we'd be pretty doomed. And so I basically have no choice but to try to hit the very best hit we can every time. This takes its toll on my gameplay, because I can't just swing, I have to put thought into my swings. And now is the time and place to practice this thought, instead of getting crushed under the difficulty curve. Now, I know some of you are going to say I'm overthinking this, and you very well could be right. But as time goes on, it'll become clear the exact amount of thinking we need to complete this challenge. Right now, though, we're off to see the lizard, the wonderful lizard of crystals. He's a bit annoying, sure. He does a lot of damage, and moves forward quite a bit with every attack. But actually, that's something to play to our advantage. Because if we move with the lizard, we can move it to the cliff slightly ahead in the Cemetery of Ash. And let's just say, the lizard doesn't know what a cliff is, and that means we can get it to jump off, and we emote for good measure. The rest of the Cemetery of Ash is pretty simple. After lighting the bonfire, it's a quick 30-second run to Gundyr, stopping to pick up a Titanite shard. Gundyr is a boss that, with a little thought, should be really easy theoretically. Since he can be parried fairly easily, you can just parry him, and riposte, which counts as one attack, since the parry itself doesn't do damage. And then, as he's recovering, you can just emote, right? Well, no. Often, you don't have enough time to do a full emote. We find this out at a rather inopportune time, so while trying to get our emote off, our next strategy is to parry, but then try to get behind Gundyr while emoting. Most of the emotes in this game allow you to walk while using them, meaning we can kind of reposition ourselves and get an emote off before we have to dodge. On the parry leading into Phase 2, the phase transition also gives us a free emote while Gundyr is getting infected by the Pus of Man, letting us start off Phase 2 being able to attack. This phase is much easier, as Gundyr only attacks very specific spots with his new moveset, and after we land an attack, we can just emote behind him or wherever else we need to reset our attack state. And finally, with one final heavy attack, Gundyr is defeated to bring a pretty strategic fight to its end point. Now moving into Firelink, we have quite a bit of business to take care of. The very first thing we do is exit out the top right, and do the tree jump in order to make it to this part of Firelink early. There's quite a few items here, the most important of which are actually these homeward bones, because if you trade it with the crow, it'll drop you a jester along with the bracelet it gives you. The bracelet isn't really important, What is important is the gesture. We can't move while using this gesture, sure, but it's a half-second faster than all the other gestures in the game, meaning in some cases, this one might actually be better. Plus, it lets you go. There's also a free Estus shard here, as well as the covetous Silver Serpent Ring, which will increase our soul gain throughout this run. We then head to Andre, who along with allotting and upgrading our flask, will give us an emote if we talk to him twice. It's not a good one for this run, but it's still good to gather what we can. We then sell all of our consumable souls, because we're about to use them in a second. But with the covetous Silver Serpent Ring equipped, we can meet the Swordmaster. The Swordmaster is an often intimidating early game mini-boss, but if you're smart, he's really easy. If you position yourself right, and wait for him to attack, he will throw himself off the edge. And because we're standing so close to the edge, he will often try to attack us, and slip, giving us a cool 2,000 souls. Now, with a metric shit ton of souls, we have some important leveling decisions. We decide that after getting 11 decks for later, we want to mix strength and health, mostly leaning into health, since on this run, we're bound to take damage. High Wall is our first destination on this run, and we have quite the plan. High Wall starts out a lot slower than most other runs. Having to bait out just one enemy, then spend a few seconds going, "Hey," after every hit is annoying. And as well as emoting, we're usually fully charging a heavy attack, or just heavy attacking, in order to not have to hit enemies more than once. When we do accidentally light attack, we're shown why we shouldn't have. The Mimic, not too far off, is an enemy we're gonna have to take on. The Mimic is possibly the most threatening enemy in the game, if not in High Wall. If you aren't careful, you'll get grabbed by the Mimic while emoting, and lose most or all of your health. Thankfully, the Mimic can be staggered. After each hit, and especially on the non-stagger hits, we run away from the Mimic, usually to higher elevation in order to emote. If we're lucky, we can get a plunge off after the emote, which in an ideal world would let us repeat the cycle. Lothric is far from ideal though, and we're forced to finish the fight in the corner, with a shit camera angle. After the Mimic, there's just a couple more enemies that we have to dispatch and yell at, but then we're to our first bonfire, which marks progress. And now that we're at the second Puss of Man, we pick up the firebombs and use them against the Puss of Man. Range is a pretty decent, if not cheesy way to take out enemies here. And while I won't use it too much since it's really boring and easy, the Puss of Man are an exception because they drop Titanite shards, and we're gonna gather them to make our plan work. The Puss of Man here is actually really weak to fire. As an example, when you throw a firebomb at him, he'll stun for a few seconds, letting you get the easiest emote you'll have on this run. Rinse and repeat, and the fight will end really easily. With quite a few extra firebombs after our first fight, we head back to the first High Wall bonfire, where we land some plunges, and then hey to atone for our sins before the second Puss of Man. It's pretty similar to the first fight, where we firebomb, then hey, then firebomb, then get hit and run away before emoting, and at the end, we get a whole 2 Titanite shards from the Puss of Man. Somehow. The Armory is one of our last destinations, and aside from methodically taking out enemies, and grabbing items here like the Estus shard, Stelkey, and the Titanite shard, it's pretty uneventful. We then run back to Free Grey Rat, where we get another Titanite shard. How does this keep happening? And on the way to our second boss, we get a long sword and armor? Literally, what is this run's luck? Before Vort, we equip the Deep Battle Axe in order to be able to deal more damage to our next boss, because with a disadvantage like this, we need to make up for it wherever possible. Vort himself is rather slow. Usually, we'd rail on him repeatedly in all these openings, but now all we can do is charge one heavy attack, and then hey to charge our attack back. Phase 2 starts off the same way actually. After the 3 charges, we can get a whole 2 attacks off. And with the rest of the fight just being Vort flying around the arena, he's not really a big threat to us in particular. And that lets us slowly get another 2 attacks off, for 4 attacks to end Phase 2, and for probably what's to be our easiest fight. Then, we kill Emma with our Deep Battle Axe, and swap to the regular one before heading to the settlement. We grab a few things, mainly Yule, a good parry shield, Loretta's Bone for Grey Rat, a third Estus shard, some Titanite shards, the charcoal pine resins here, and finally, our covenant. All of these things will be useful in one way or another soon. For now, we both level up our strength, and level strength further from Yol by farming his levels, all while we're progressing Greyrat's quest. At the end of our shopping spree, we've gotten Curl Up, another useless emote from Greyrat, and sent him on a pillage. And we've also reached 28 strength, close to where we want to be. We then head back to the settlement one more time, unlocking the Cliff Underside bonfire, getting our 12th Titanite shard, grabbing an Undead Bone Shard, and unlocking the shortcut to our next boss. We burn this Bone Shard and take on the boss. I'm hoping the Greatwood doesn't turn out to be too hard, but we do have 2 charcoal pine resins, which in the worst case can make our job a bit easier. But they are to be used with caution due to their limited duration and our slow attack speed. The Greatwood actually seems to take alright damage, yellow to the cysts, which is good, especially with our unupgraded weapon. We then decide that Point Forward is our better emote here, because we can walk while emoting, and a lot of the Greatwood's attacks can just miss you if you're positioned well. It only takes a couple of charged attacks to pop the first cyst, and we can land those pretty easily as long as there are no hollow workers tormenting us. And this is because on his own, Phase 1 Greatwood can't do much. Phase 2 is actually easier, in all honesty. With lots of small cysts to pop, and getting a free stun after each one, emoting is basically not an issue, and the only thing it does is prevent us from attacking too quick. We pop the first one, then the one he has on his hand in 2 hits, then the one on his other thigh, and finally we pop the one on the back after a couple hits. But the wood isn't dead, so we charge one final attack to hit the hand, and finish the job, killing the wood like that. Now that we've killed the Greatwood, we can level our strength to 30, which is what we're going to need. In addition to reaching our strength goal, Greyrat is back in Firelink now, which means we can kill some NPCs and sell their goods, at least the ones we don't put on our face, to buy as Y. We also have a heavy gem, which lets us get a +3 heavies Y after we do some running for the Farron Coal, and the Farron Coal is just what we need for our real route. You might think we're heading to someplace like the Road of Sacrifices. Maybe you think I'm heading straight to Farron Keep, skipping the Crystal Sage. But do you think I'm just some guy who will take on the game the boring way? No, that's not the way I want to play this. Welcome to the real challenge. Dancer is our boss now. Since we're taking it on so early, this is an upsettingly small amount of damage, especially for a fully charged attack. Getting the emote off is not too bad, at least in Phase 1. Dancer honestly feels like she doesn't want to fight. She spends most of the time just kind of waltzing around. So pointing is our ideal emote for this fight. We do still sometimes take damage due to the cycle of emoting into attacking, throwing off our rhythm, leading to attacking or emoting at dumb times, hurting us a lot. But despite that, Phase 2 is pretty easy to make it to, and that's where things fall apart. Phase 2 is when Dancer gets some pep in her step, and she starts spinning around, swinging wildly and throwing out tough-to-dodge attacks. And in an endurance fight like we're taking on here, that's a recipe for disaster. Trying to charge an attack alone is a challenge, but emoting at all in this fight? No, it's just horrible. It's incredibly hard to manage an emote here normally, and with how attacking is already, we should come up with something new. Our first revelation here is a simple one. Light attacks aren't useless here. Yeah, they do bad damage, but they're quick, especially the rolling attack. That's the first half of our fight solved, or at least made slightly easier than a fully charged heavy attack. But the other part is still something we need to figure out. Gesturing at the right time is annoying, to say the least. It's impossible to tell whether Dancer actually wants to attack you, or if she's going to stay passive. Trying to predict and react to this is a fool's errand. There's a better way to do this, as it turns out. The arena isn't just a rectangle, although it does look like it. On top of the annoying pews that we often get stuck on in the corner, there are pillars that are really hard for Dancer to move past, which means when we can get a hit off, if we just run around these pillars, we'll eventually have enough space to knock out an emote, which lets us start the whole loop again, and again, and again, and eventually kill Dancer. We head back to Firelink, put another 10 levels into strength, which brings us to 40, our actual goal. 30 was our initial goal, but now that 40 is possible, we can make it there. And then we drop the ladder and head into Lothric Castle. At this point, you might ask why we're doing this. My answer to that is... watch the video, man. You think I'm just gonna let viewer retention drop like that? Watch the video and you'll find out. The rest of Lothric Castle is kinda boring. We're not here to kill any enemies, and other than an undead bone shard, nothing here is of any use to us. So we run through the castle, unlock the shortcut to the nearest bonfire, and make it to the Dragon Slayer armor. Since the Dragon Slayer is our first, second, third, fourth, fifth boss on this run, and one of the last bosses in the game, we're pretty ill-equipped to take on this boss, especially now. I already hear one of you commenting, "Why are you in Lothric Castle so early? Just come here later." Shut up, you don't see the vision yet. The armor isn't the worst thing to dodge. He swings in a fairly straightforward way. His weapon just absolutely destroys us sometimes. If only we could get that weapon. It'd destroy the whole game, and we'd only have to swing a couple times to win. Huh. Well, for now, the only way we can get an emote off without getting absolutely destroyed is the fountain in the middle. If we position ourselves right, the armor tries to swing through the fountain, as if he's under the impression that it'll hit me, at which point we can point at the armor, menacingly. Phase 2 isn't much different from the armor, but it gets a lot harder when the pilgrim butterflies start trying to meddle in our fight. Well, I guess more than they already are. They can shoot one of a few projectiles at us. Firstly, they can shoot lots of little, chip damage projectiles that actually kind of destroy us since we're so underleveled. These are alright to deal with. It's honestly just spam rolling and luck to dodge these. What even are these, like magic blood bullets? The other projectile is just one big one that does a lot of damage. This one's a lot easier to dodge if we can see it, since a lot of the time, it's behind us. The third attack is a laser that doesn't really matter, so the rest of this fight is just another phase 1. It's slow, but it will be worth it. It is worth it, especially since we got the Soul of the Dragon Slayer armor. After something like that, what else would you want to see but why we did this? Well, you're gonna have to sit through this promo first, if you want to. If you like this video, can you check if you're subscribed? Lots of people don't actually realize they are when they're regular viewers. And if you are subscribed, have you joined my Discord? We have a very nice community there, and we host monthly challenges. We actually just finished this month's challenge, which was shields only. I actually have a few finishers to mention, specifically Southern, SnapDragoon, Freemium Dude, Starry Faye, and Luna. Some of these people have their own channels too, which I've linked in the description in case you want to see them. And actually, I'm going to announce this month's challenge right now. This month's challenge is going to be bows only. Be sure to join for rules and specifics. Maybe even become a member of our community. Sorry for the shameless promo. Back to my video. Now with the Soul of the Dragon Slayer armor, we can give the transposing kiln to Ludlith. And Ludlith will now transpose balls. And Ludlith will now transpose boss souls for us. With the boss souls we currently have, we can get the Dragon Slayer Great Axe, which is our fucking balls, dude. We can get the Dragon Slayer Great Axe, which is our true weapon for this run. Massive single target damage, and while it's heavy, it does lightning damage, which is easily the best damage type in Dark Souls 3. And now that we're able to smite our enemies with the Wrath of Gwyn, we're ready to destroy this game after some light preparation. The first step is to upgrade this thing to +1 with the Titanite scale we gathered right at the beginning of this run from the Ravenous Crystal Lizard. But now, this thing is so heavy that we fat roll unless we take off our pants. So let's skip over to Fair and Keep, where we find a ladder that leads to an elevator. And that elevator leads us to the Stray Demon. The Stray Demon is the first real test of this thing's damage, and it's actually pretty solid. In order to take the demon down, it'll take quite a few hits, but one hit on its own takes a significant amount of its health down. After a couple haze and attacks, the demon dies. Oh, no, what? His legs broke? What? Dude, since when does this even exist? What the hell? Well, I guess that means we get the Stray Demon Soul. Ludlith can now transpose his Havel's Ring too, and by grabbing our armor just to reduce our equip load, and leveling vitality as much as possible, we can get just under fat roll load with our ideal loadout, which is our Dragon Slayer Great Axe, Leonhard's Mask, the Mira Vest, gloves, and for now, the Mira Trousers, as well as the Grass Crest Shield, and small leather round shield to parry when we need to. We also pick up the Chloranthy Ring along with our armor, which increases our stamina recovery by 7 points per second. With this, we can take on the Crystal Sage. To convince you of my damage output, let's look at the damage from one parry and riposte. Yeah, safe to say, she didn't last. We continue into the Cathedral of the Deep, using our newfound weapon to grab an Estus Shard. The graves outside the cathedral are better ran through than fought through though. The enemies here actually respawn, and they're not very harmful as long as we run through it. We find a bone shard on the way, and make our way into the cathedral. The actual run through the cathedral can be majorly shortened, and we shorten it enough that we have to come back to grab Lloyd's Sword Ring, which increases our damage by 10% at max health. We also have to run back to the grave to get something we missed. There's a second Ravenous Crystal Lizard here, who when killed gives a Titanite scale. Then, we get tricked by Patches and buy some armor off of him, which lets us save Sigurd, and then run off to the Deacons. The Deacons are the premier crowd control boss in Dark Souls 3, and that means we have to fight them a little differently. If only we had a move that could hit AoE and absolutely destroy this boss. Oh well. Our attacks here just normally one-shot the Deacons, which makes this fight a non-issue, especially with the pillars that let us hay for free. And when phase 2 starts, we just wish we had an AoE. It'd like totally destroy this fight. Too bad for us. Guess we gotta destroy the boss the normal way. The souls we get from the Deacons give us the Tower Key, which, as well as giving us the Firekeeper Skirt, we get the Estus Ring, which would increase our Estus recovery, but we need Havel's Ring to not fat roll. Funnily enough, things work out just right to where we can level Vitality and unequip our Parry Shield to just barely have the weight to use the Estus Ring. With that, we head to Farron Keep. Farron Keep only has a couple things here for us, and there are just a couple Estus items. Other than that, we already grabbed all the useful stuff from the old Wolf of Farron area, so the only thing we're here for is the Abyss Watchers. The Watchers are pretty aggressive, but they can also get stunned. And well, they don't have much health. And they also get distracted, letting us emote. So when there's more than one Watcher, we can take advantage of that, and do lots of damage. When there's just one Watcher, things are a bit slower, but there will always be opportunities for damage. And along with easy emoting, Phase 1 is pretty easy. Phase 2 is a bit tougher to emote, but we only need to do it a couple times. And we just absolutely destroy the Watcher's health bar, making this fight an absolute cakewalk because of our weapon. We go back to Farron Keep Perimeter after this, because we missed another 2 Titanite scales from this Ravenous Crystal Lizard. That lets us get a +2 weapon. Now into the Catacombs. The Catacombs are just a marginally annoying one-shot fest. One-shot a wizard for an undead bone shard, hit a bridge, we even one-shot Wolnir's rings. Well, the first one. The other 2 are 2 shots. But all in all, Wolnir is pretty easy. Then, we drop down that bridge I mentioned to go to Smoldering Lake. There's a demon here, who honestly seems like he doesn't even want to fight. But me and this skeleton here force him to, and take his souls. I guess he didn't have a name, I mean, it just says Soul of a Demon. Now, to the most annoying area in the game. There are a couple things we want here. First off are a couple bone shards, both in kinda tedious circumstances. One in the circumstance of waiting, and the other in a gank fest. On top of that, some light parkour gets us another Estus Shard. And the last thing we want here is a Titanite Scale, which we can just grab by hitting a plunge and a weapon art, and we find it in this little vine-covered forest deep within this area. And just because we've been so dominant on this run, I'm gonna let the fight with the old Demon King immediately after this just play in full. After this, I feel like I have too many souls. So we use the tower key we've had to finally go grab the last Firekeeper soul in Lothric. And use it to cure our dark... Oh, come on! At least I know how to do this jump. Once we heal our Dark Sigil, we absolutely destroy Sullivan's Beast on our way to Irithyll, destroying it in 3, pretty much 2, hits. Now that we're in the Irithyll, we have to run back to Firelink to send Greyrat on a pillage, for some reason. But now that we're running through Irithyll, I just cannot express how much I love this weapon art. It just takes out anything annoying with a single pull of the trigger. A little further ahead, there's an undead bone shard behind this grave here. And we take a long run to Pontiff, where not much happens in between. Pontiff, however, is a good time. We equip our Parashield and wreck him. After a parry, we have enough time to emote before he attacks us, and after 2 parries, we're to phase 2, where we weapon art to kill the clone before he can even do anything. Then we do it all again, and that ends Pontiff pretty easy. Greyrat is back from Irithyll, saved thanks to which one was in this game? We grabbed 3 Titanite Scales from Greyrat thanks to the boss souls, and get a +3 weapon, meaning we only need a few more to get a +4, and then we can get a +5 just because there's Titanite slabs all over the place. Speaking of, there's a Titanite Scale in Anor Londo, and on the way to Aldrich, there's Nestus Shard. Speaking of Aldrich, he takes quite a bit of damage. Cheater! Cheater, we're cheating! Oh, okay, we boned out. Aldrich is yet another boss on the list that's trivialized by routing. We can get 1 fully charged heavy attack in before he teleports, which then is an easy opportunity to hay, even in phase 2. Aldrich does do some lifesteal shenanigans, and even pulls out arrows, but it's nothing we can't handle. Aldrich goes down, and we grab the Ring of the Sun Princess, before heading to Irithyll Dungeon. There are some drops in the Irithyll Dungeon we care about. The first of which is this Titanite Scale from this Crystal Lizard. The other 2 are both from Mimics. 1 drops Nestus Shard, and 1 drops 2 more Titanite Scales. Then, with the rest of this area being uneventful, we move to the Profaned Capital, where we pick up an Undead Bone Shard before Yorm. Yorm is bound to be pretty easy on this run, since you might have noticed, we have no restriction on weapons we can use, so the Storm Ruler actually makes really quick work out of Yorm, since we can just hay while he's stunned, making this fight pretty much just a minute-long cutscene. Lothric Castle remains the only place we can go. You might think I'd just skip to the Grand Archive since I've killed both Dancer and the Dragon Slayer armor, but actually, we head to the left from the ladder, and head to the Consumed King's Garden. In the garden, there's actually quite a bit of what we want. There's our second to last Estus Shard, and a Titanite Scale hidden away in a shortcut area. We only need 2 more scales before +4, and I know just where to find them. Osiris is the first boss that really brings us back to reality. Having a nice and overpowered weapon for early game bosses is certainly nice, but now that we're back to where we should be in progression with this weapon, it's disappointing how many times we have to emote. The good news is that emoting isn't too difficult. Osiris in phase 1 often just spends his time walking at you, making it easy to emote after running away a bit. Being under Osiris usually lets us get an attack in, since Osiris's attacks usually hit outwards from him, which differs from bosses like the old Demon King, because usually if you can get under a boss, they like to compensate for it. This is remedied for in phase 2, where Osiris has rather bad hitboxes, unfortunately for us. The good thing about this phase is that Osiris spends enough time away from us that we can emote pain-free, leaving this fight to be hardly different from normal. And this run is doing pretty well all things considered, so some slightly modified from normal gameplay isn't going to stop us. Right after Osiris are our last 2 Titanite Scales, meaning we have all we need for a +4 weapon. Behind one of these chests, though, is an illusory wall that takes us to the Untended Graves, and to Gundyr. Gundyr is a boss that with a little thought should be really easy, at least theoretically. Since he can be parried fairly easily, you can just parry him, and when you need to emote, you can either parry again, or just make it work. That's just phase 1 though, and when phase 2 comes along, things switch up a bit. Gundyr becomes a lot faster than he was before, and way more aggressive. Any downtime we would have gotten before instantly vanishes. Whenever we think we're safe enough to emote, Gundyr always has something to say about it. Sometimes it's a foot stomp AoE, Sometimes he recovers from a parry in no time. Gundyr is one of the best bosses in the series though, and that means I have the most practice with him. We can parry into riposte, then spend another parry to heal, or to hay, which is just something we can do over and over, slowly depleting our resources as we slowly deplete his health. But in the end, we win out. Then we continue into the evil version of Firelink, where we get the Coiled Sword Fragment and the Eyes of a Firekeeper. Now equipped with the Path of the Dragon emote, we take a nap in Archdragon Peak, where we grab the Lightning Clutch Ring, increasing our lightning damage and the damage we take, which will be useful since we're using a lightning weapon. For now, we have the worst gimmick boss in the game. I've never taken this boss on without a plunging attack, always just running around and one-shotting it. That sounds kinda boring, right? What if we did it normally? Well, yeah, what if? Why would we ever do that? You seriously thought the rest of the peak actually has a Titanite slab, which gives us our +5 weapon. We then pull a lever and oh shit, King of the Storm is finally up, after quite a bit of build-up. The King of the Storm obviously likes to use lightning, so he's bound to be resistant to it, right? I mean, that doesn't bode very well for us since a lot of our damage is lightning. Holy shit, 1500? Well, safe to say, getting that much damage per hit pretty much invalidates this whole fight, right? Well, not quite. Once the dragon is down, the Nameless King absorbs its power. Wow, I guess he was really weak to lightning. Phase 2 is where the Nameless King actually shows his hand, being the tankiest boss so far, at least in terms of time spent on this fight. Landing a hit on this guy, especially a fully charged one like we want to, is going to be tough. At first, all we can seem to do is find openings where the king will either miss us, but this fight does have a saving grace: RP walking. The Nameless King, because he's just a LARPer posing as the Sonic Gwyn, often just walks at us. So in the right moment, we can hay or just point, if we want to make it look cool. The fight still takes a while, since he doesn't like to RP walk all the time, and when he does attack, he's usually just baiting us and throwing us off, just as a hard boss should. We then work the boss down, always trying to land a stagger, but never managing since we have to spend so long waiting to hit the boss. Despite this, we're still able to kinda clown on the boss, at least when he isn't reading us like a book. We do kill the Nameless King after enough time though, and now there's only one place to go, and it's to the Grand Archives. The Grand Archives is our last area with anything useful. Since the DLC lacks anything we're going to want to upgrade our build, and we're going to be at max Estus by the Twin Princes, we're just going to grab the necessities here, which would be the Estus Shard and Undead Bone Shard. And unlocking the elevator shortcut brings us to the Twin Princes. The Twin Princes consist of 2 phases, the first of which is just Lorien. Lorien on his own, well, he's quick, that's for sure. He usually attacks once or twice, and by the time we can land a hit, he's already in the midst of another combo. This makes landing hits while remaining unscathed difficult. Often we take damage, or fail to land a hit at all. Dodging these attacks at all takes some serious skill. With how fast Lorien is able to circle behind you, or fake you out, you have to be on your toes, especially if you're waiting to emote. You have to take a second to close the emote menu if you're trying to dodge, so not only do you have to judge if you're safe, you have to judge if you're going to immediately take damage, and be ready to close the menu and dodge. Usually, a better emote is just a hey, but sometimes we point when we feel like we need to walk. The boss's health bar itself is fragile, especially in a scenario like this when we're doing as much damage as the +5 Dragon Slayer Great Axe does. Plus Lloyd's, and the Clutch Ring, it actually only takes like a handful of hits to kill the boss, which isn't that many for the penultimate boss of the main game. Phase 2 is when Lothric gets a spot in the spotlight. Lothric likes to use magic, like a lot. You have a bunch of magic particles spawn every so often. Sometimes you get this Soul Spear-esque attack, sometimes he even adds into other attacks. Landing hits hasn't changed too much. All that's different is that sometimes we're not as safe as we might remember from Phase 1, and have to throw in an extra dodge before a punish. What is made different is the emote game. Before, we'd run away and hope that Lorien doesn't engage us. He still would sometimes, and we'd have to do it again, if we're not out of range. In this phase, when you're out of range, or at the far end of it, Lothric pretty much always casts magic. Sometimes this is a simple Soul Spear, and sometimes it's a whole lot of particles. This looks bad, right? Like, yeah, now we have to spend a bunch of time running around and waiting for them to disappear. But actually, in the time it takes to summon the magic, we're able to emote and reset the cycle. Oftentimes when we hit the boss though, we miss Lothric and just hit Lorien, while he often hits us, stalling our progress and making the enemy some progress of their own. We remedy this by not going for fully charged hits, and instead go for reliable light attacks that I know will hit Lothric, and sometimes a weapon art if we know that'll hit too. Even though we continue to just hit Lorien and take damage, this ends up working out for us, and we first try the Twin Princes, and with no time to lose, we jump into the DLC. Honestly, I don't even know who would ever think this area isn't just some horrible place to be ran through. There's literally nothing of value here. And even the things we do find are 2 black fire bombs. So we break a bridge and head down to our first DLC boss. The Champion's Gravetender is our first truly bad boss. It starts out with 3 wolves, already kind of weird, but harmless as we actually kill 2 out of the 3 in 1 hit, and the other goes down to his own attack. Emoting with wolves, or even just the Champion's Gravetender, is a bit of an issue, but we can often use the environment to circle them out for just long enough to finish our emote. And the Gravetender himself is the easiest thing in the world to trade with. Even if we get blocked, we often do enough damage to make it worth it. And once we kill the Gravetender, the Great Wolf kills us, goes down soon after. Now we have the long run to Frida. Wilhelm dies in a couple hits, and everything else just kind of falls apart. And we get 2 large Titanite shards. Well, what else to do but fight, right? Frida is a boss that just... man, I don't even want to get into it. Okay. So Frida can be hit pretty easy, especially when she goes invisible. And pretty much the same goes for emoting. The fight is pretty slow, waiting for her to do something punishable. And phase 1 is just, the quickest phase, so that's really encouraging for the rest of the fight. Once that's over, assuming we don't bone out or die in the seconds after starting phase 2, we have phase 2. Phase 2 is, well, a lot different from the rest of the fight. Our main target is Father Ariandel, and he's slow, easy to hit, and pretty vulnerable to our attacks. The problem here is that Frida, if she isn't outright assaulting us, is casting Frostbite from afar, making hitting the boss unsafe, let alone emoting. If the stress from this doesn't outright get us, the damage buildup and reduced stamina recovery of Frostbite will. Father Ariandel also likes to use his Breath of Fire to both get rid of our Frostbite, to get it again of course, and to deal damage to us in the process. He doesn't do much to us on his own, but with the assistance of his pot, he does quite a bit. He doesn't last though. Well, he does last. Of course this fight takes forever. He doesn't last forever, and Frida comes back with a vengeance. Phase 3 of this boss is... evil? Is evil the word I'm looking for? Okay, yeah, evil. The amount of attacks that can't be punished just leave this boss to be nothing but running and dodging. Especially because the length of these combos is just... nuts. Upwards of 10 swings per combo. And if you manage to be out of range from those swings for even a second, it's common she'll just jump towards you. Or maybe even throw some Frostbite on her way over. Or just slit your throat. And all this is just about our attacks, because landing damage is the easy part of this fight. My shortest attack animation is only half a second? Compare that to the point, let alone hey, which is worse because we can't move during it, and you have a recipe for a bad and drawn out fight, especially after 2 phases of a not very special or interesting fight, and phase 3 doesn't help with that at all. When we can land a fully charged hit, usually due to invisibility, we're not sad with the damage, we just don't often get the opportunity to, especially when sometimes that opportunity is wasted doing a dramatic point. Despite this, time after time and hit after hit, we slowly but surely kill Frida. Now, into the Dreg Heap. A little detail, completely irrelevant to the run at hand, is that there's movement here. Those little towers in the background are moving. That's such a small detail. Very cool though. The actual Dreg Heap isn't anything interesting. Genuinely, this area is full of nothing. Just look. But now, we're to the first boss of our second DLC. And the first boss is actually 2 bosses. The Demon from Below and Demon in Pain are a pain. Get it? A pain. This boss's moveset is pretty much designed to be explicitly annoying, especially when they give us 2 demons. As we try to hit one, the other is shooting a poison path in our way, and if we don't get out of the way, we'll take lots and lots of damage. And on top of that, most of our toxic meter fills up, meaning if we get hit with another one, we'll get toxic, a guaranteed death sentence. The active demon is also a threat, just because, you know, it's a Dark Souls boss, of course it's a threat. The boss is actually very good at catching us out, especially if we spam roll or try to get greedy, and its slashes destroy us. There are times where both demons are active, and then is when we go to prioritize the demon in pain, for one specific reason later. Eventually, both demons calm down, and by the time the one from below is getting mad again, the one in pain is getting his permanent relief. And in case you were wondering, emoting hasn't been an issue during this fight. Since the boss has a habit of flying away, a lot of the downtime in this boss is just spent running at it. But now it's not much but a hey, letting us reveal the Demon Prince for our real fight. The Demon Prince pretty much has more health than both the demons in Phase 1 had combined. And to top that off, the boss is a lot more ruthless than the version of him from below ever could have been. The Demon Prince also moves around a lot, and he does it while attacking in a way that feels natural, but difficult for us to dodge. For instance, one of the things the Demon Prince can do is jump around in a circle, and as he lands, swipe at you, which, if not prepared for, is a bit difficult to deal with. Another attack that can give us trouble is the Demon's Laser. That may be shocking to some of you, but when you can only get just about one attack in, it's a bit of an issue when the second laser comes around. Thankfully, we have an emote just for this. Watch and learn, as I lay down in front of your eyes, and avoid it all. After that fight, we go ahead and take a nap in the arena here. Now we raise our banner, and head to the Ring City, which is by far the most boring area. The Bridge Meteor is just as boring, so boring that I won't mention it just like the preceding area. Wait, shit, I shouldn't have said that. Cut that. On our way to our next boss, as well as unlocking an elevator shortcut, we grab an upgrade to our Chloranthy Ring, going from 7 additional points of stamina a second to 10 additional points of stamina a second. Now, with the final upgrade to our build, we drop down to Meteor. Meteor is a boss that doesn't change from run to run. He's always here, he has the same moveset, the same health, and the same AI every time. What? No, get that off the screen. Wait, Meteor has adaptive AI? Well, regardless, Meteor's difficulty varies majorly from run to run. Say on a run like the Pierce Shield run I did recently. He was pretty hard. I was barely able to hit him. I didn't do much damage, you know, the usual for a tough run. But for a run like, I mean this was forever ago, but the No HUD run, Meteor was actually pretty easy. I could hit him after nearly every attack, and on top of that, the damage was nice. Or at least I think it was. But did you notice that? On the difficult run, the range was an issue, and on the easy one, it was barely given a passing mention. And that's integral to Meteor's difficulty. If you happen to have a weapon that can bonk Meteor in the head without much trouble, this fight is going to be decently easy, at least in the aspect of dealing damage. In terms of emoting, oh wow, yeah, that's easier than I expected. I guess if you just want to run away you can. Thanks for the free emote, Meteor. Another tiny strategy you might not notice, but helps a lot if you're struggling, is to not lock onto the boss. Meteor's head being his weak point, he moves it around a lot, but it's also the main lock-on point, which means that if you lock onto his head, your camera will swivel and spin, missing the actual parts of Meteor you want to be focusing on. As a general rule of thumb, once he's done with an attack, he will usually just kinda present his head to you, and you can just kinda bonk him. He has a lot of hand swipes, and is generally kind of a nuisance to fight, even if we know how to. He just runs around a lot and stalls us out. Worst of all, he drowns us out. I can't even hear my hey anymore. Once we stagger Meteor, we can emote and land a very free riposte, which just kills him outright. Wow, look at that. Alright, now the rest of this run is nothing but boss. No runbacks, no fighting, no gathering, just bosses. Let's do this. Half-Light is more intimidating than one might think. The Painting Guardians, as people might know, love to heal. And when we have to point after every attack, those heals are physically impossible to stop. So instead, we think about it in a different way, because otherwise, I'd definitely rage quit. The way we think about it is that we're just fighting one gigantic health bar, instead of the squishy Painting Guardian we see. After we do drain all the heals from the Guardian, we just have to finish him off. That would be easy if everything him and Half-Light didn't interrupt my emotes. Fuck! Oh yeah, there's pillars here. Well, Half-Light himself isn't too hard to hit and emote on, since he likes to use his bow or sheath his katana, which doesn't exactly enable him to catch up to me. Once we get into Phase 2 though, with the second Guardian, our forced strategy of draining the heals basically fully heals Half-Light here, unfortunately. Fortunately for us though, we're not exactly taking all the damage in the world either, and by the end of the fight, we still have a couple heals left, for a pretty simple, if not drawn out, and frustrating fight. Then, after we disturb the exact lady Half-Light told us not to disturb, we're at the end of time. Now, our penultimate boss is the one we're most scared of. If you know anything about Gale, it's that he gives you no breaks. No time to heal, or get a free attack in, let alone get a full emote off. The only completely safe time I can see for myself is the vertical plunge Gale does. Much like any sticking of a sword into ash, it takes time to pull out and ready for another swing. So if we were prepared, and lucky, we can hay before Gale gets an attack off on us. That's just what's safe though. And if you challenge run consistently, you know that sometimes just being safe won't get you anywhere. Sometimes you have to risk emoting just because you're far away and hope you don't get hit, because the less time you spend in this fight, the better. Damage is pretty good as far as Gale goes, being the meanest, reddest boss in all of Souls. He takes a lot more when we get to stagger him from a fully charged heavy attack, which can be landed one of a few ways. Usually, it's from another vertical plunge, but sometimes we just happen it from our distance and the timing of it all. Above all else, it only takes a handful of hits to take us into the hard part. Yeah, all we just did was the easy part. Phase 2 is a very different beast because Gale no longer staggers from a fully charged heavy attack, and on top of that, it becomes a lot harder to emote. Gale has a plethora of ranged attacks, ranging from Corona to lots and lots of arrows, and on top of that, if we get too far away, Gale comes and sees us again himself, the clingy bastard. Wait, well this actually takes a while. I think we can exploit this to emote. Well, that's one thing solved. Even if he refuses to do it sometimes and makes us do a risky emote, the fight progresses. Once Gale turns to Phase 3, where lightning and cape projectiles fly everywhere, it becomes even harder still to emote, especially with Gale's extended combos. But hit after hit, you know how the story goes. The Cinders go on their thrones, and we get to watch the in-engine cutscene, up to Soul of Cinder. Soul of Cinder seems to be obsessed with running, as the incarnation of every player who does the frigid outskirts run back would. This translates to downtime being hard to come by, but at least when we trade with the boss, we do really good damage, at least relative to any of the DLC bosses we've been fighting. Whatever the phase he puts us through, there's always something we can do to emote, especially in Phase 2, when the damage takes us back to when we first got this weapon. And this is obviously not the height of our challenge, which means we get to link the flame.